I'm sure I'm a sucker for a good dog pic online. But today's deep dive goes way beyond cuteness, right? We are diving deep into how dogs support mental health, like actually support mental health.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting area, right? Because we talk about the benefits of animals in general, therapy animals, but dogs, they just have this totally unique bond with us, with people. And it allows for this really specific support that I don't think you get with other animals.
It's pretty incredible. So we were looking into this podcast, Dogs and Mental Health Support, and they shared this story about Carlos, a former soldier dealing with PTSD.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, PTSD it can be really tough, can it? It can have such a huge impact on someone's life.
Absolutely. And in this podcast, they mentioned Carlos was dealing with insomnia, nightmares. He was having panic attacks, always on edge. It just sounded so debilitating.
And that sense of safety, of security, that's got to be so important for someone struggling with PTSD. So did they talk about how things changed for him?
That's where Thor comes in, his Labrador retriever. But Thor's not just any dog. He was a specially trained service dog.
And I think that's an important distinction to make, right? Service dog versus a regular dog. Because while all dogs, of course, offer companionship, service dogs, they go through this really intense, rigorous training to actually perform specific tasks that help people, that mitigate a person's disability.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So in Carlos's case, Thor was trained to specifically help him with his PTSD.
Yeah. And this is pretty incredible. Thor was trained to recognize the signs of a panic attack before it even happened. Imagine having an early warning system for a panic attack.
Wow, that would be life-changing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and in the podcast, they were saying that Thor would actually nudge Carlos with his paw or just kind of lay down next to him when he sensed a panic attack coming on, just offering that physical presence, which can be so grounding, so reassuring.
It's like having a superpower almost, right? To have Thor there, knowing when those panic attacks were coming before Carlos even realized it, it just makes you appreciate that bond even more.
Absolutely. And it makes you realize how much they understand. They sense things, they pick up on our emotions in a way that we don't even fully grasp sometimes. And for someone like Carlos, who's dealing with PTSD, having that unspoken support, that constant presence, it can be huge. It helps them feel safe enough to start living life again, to step outside, to be around other people.
And that's something they talked about in the podcast, right? That Carlos was actually able to start leaving the house again, even hang out with friends.
Exactly. That's social isolation. That's a big part of a lot of mental health challenges, not just PTSD.
It makes you wonder, what other mental health challenges can dogs help with? I mean, did the podcast mention any others?
They did. They talked about how helpful dogs can be for people struggling with depression.
Oh, yeah. I can definitely see that. Just, they're always happy to see you, right?
Right. They're always there with that wagging tail. But it's more than just that. What they were saying in the podcast is that having a dog creates this sense of purpose. You have to get up, you have to take them for a walk, you have to feed them. And that kind of routine, that responsibility, it can be really motivating, especially for someone struggling with depression who might not have a lot of energy or motivation otherwise.
So even just those basic things like taking the dog out can make a real difference.
Exactly. And there's actually a fascinating biological component to this as well. Studies have actually shown that petting a dog for just 15 minutes, it releases all this oxytocin. And that's the hormone that makes us feel good, It strengthens our bonds and it reduces cortisol, which is the stress hormone.
It's amazing, isn't it? Just the simple act of petting a dog can have such a profound impact on our mental well-being. It really makes you think. But, we've been talking a lot about service dogs. Are those the only dogs that can provide these kinds of benefits? What about, our awesome dogs at home?
That is a great question. And it's important to remember that while all dogs offer companionship and that emotional support, the key difference with service dogs is really that training. They go through rigorous training to perform these very specific tasks, like we saw with Thor, recognizing Carlos's panic attacks.
So it's not really something you can DIY at home with your pup.
Right, it's not quite that simple.
Yeah.
While you can definitely teach your dog basic obedience, maybe even some fun tricks, service dog training, it's a whole other ballgame. It takes years of specialized training to prepare a dog for that kind of responsibility.
It's incredible when you think about it. So say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, wow, a service dog could really help me, or, maybe someone they know. What should they do?
That's a really good question. I think the most important thing is to consult with a mental health professional first. They can really help determine if a service dog is a good fit. taking into account their individual needs and their circumstances.
So it's not just about loving dogs. It's about finding the right type of support for your specific situation.
Exactly. And if a service dog is deemed a good fit, there are so many reputable organizations out there that specialize in training and carefully pairing service dogs with individuals who need them.
It's amazing, really, how much dogs can do for us. And it's not even just about, like, the dogs themselves, It's that bond, that connection we have with them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a two-way street. The love and care and understanding that we give to our dogs, it comes back to us. Maybe not always in ways that we can see, but you can always feel it.
For sure. So, before we wrap things up today, any final thoughts for our listeners, for anyone who might want to explore this more or learn more about it?
Well, if you found today's deep dive interesting, you should definitely check out the podcast episode we mentioned, Dogs and Mental Health Support. They really get into the nitty-gritty, like the science behind this bond, the kind of training service dogs go through. And they share a lot more stories about how dogs are helping people, really inspiring stuff.
It's a great listen. Definitely recommend it. And hey, even if you're not ready to adopt a dog just yet, maybe just, go show some love to a shelter dog this week. Or even just look at some cute dog pics online, right? Always brightens my day.
Hey, it's scientifically proven to boost your mood.
Exactly. Sometimes the simplest things, right? Thanks for joining us for this positive deep dive, everyone. Until next